Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Board Gaming Doctor. My name is Phil, and I'll be your Board Game Doctor today. In this video, I wanted to talk about, kind of off the cuff, another top 10 list here. These are the top 10 games that I would love to return to. Now, I have a set criteria for what I mean by this, because for the most part, I'm pretty willing to go and play any game with anyone. But if I had the chance and the opportunity to play some of these games, these I think would be at the top of my list. Now here's the reason why, and this is kind of like a mirror to the top 10 most underrated games. I thought of some of the games that I've really enjoyed in that episode where they were rated above 1,000 on Board Game Geek, and I decided to look at games that I've played on Board Game Geek already and have rated at least a 7 out of 10, and as you can see here, so games that I've rated as 7 out of 10 already after 1 or 2 plays at most, and games that I am not able to play regularly either because I either don't own the physical version of the game. There are exceptions to this, of course, on this list. There is no way to play it digitally, which is a little bit easier for me to do. Once again, there are some exceptions here too. But so I filtered my collection on Board Game Geek, or at least when it says collection, the games that I've played, and came up with these 10. And so these aren't in any particular order. Some of these games that you will see first, I think I have rated a 7 out of 10, and they progress up to an 8 out of 10. So let's get into it. So the first one on the list is going to be Woodcraft. So this is a Vladimir Suchy game, co-designed by Ross Arnold back in 2022. And I should mention too, there are a lot more games. I probably could have mentioned an honorable mention, but I wanted to bring up some games that I haven't talked about in a while on the channel or podcast. But I did cover Woodcraft a while back in, I think, 2022 when it came out. But this was the game that preceded Evacuation, which is definitely on the honorable mentions list. But I really enjoyed Woodcraft for its Euro-style mechanisms of resource management, action management over this this rondel, which was very interesting, making the choice, very similar to games of Suchy's make, such as Praga, where choosing a tile that is listed, in a certain area. If it hasn't been chosen for a while, you get bonus resources. If not, you have to pay them. And when you do choose one, you slot them into a new slot around the tap or around the rondel, making it its placement a little bit more strategic and forward thinking. And you essentially are using these resources in the form of dice, which are not rolled, but the pips on the dice can be representing of different resources, and they will be, if you're cutting like a wood example in the game, you'd be cutting them in half and thus splitting the dice into 2 different pips on 2 different dice with the sum value of what it was before. And so I really like that aspect of keeping track of resources with dice. I'm normally not a big fan of, say, dice action selection or mitigation, but I thought it was really clever how it was handled in this game. Normally, I've noticed that these Suchy games recently, such as Praga and Messina 1347, have been available on websites such as Yucata.de, and Praga, I believe, is still in alpha, or maybe it's in beta on Board Game Arena, and so I'm very hopeful that at some point Woodcraft will become more available to play. So moving on to the next one is Dead Reckoning. I also did cover this on the podcast, and that was my last play of it. This is a John D. Clare game from 2022 as well. In this game, it's a highly thematic game where you are commanding a fleet and a ship roaming the seas, and it utilizes the deck building of Mystic Vale to handle, if I can find a good picture of this, to handle your fleet. And so while you're deck building your hand and giving your crew asymmetric abilities, you are roaming around. This is the combat as well. You're roaming around a map of the island and trying to score victory points in certain ways and in diverse ways as well. And so I really like the fact that in this game you are trying to do things that are different every time. Some things will be a little bit easier to accomplish than others. They're all widely thematic, such as gaining treasure or gaining influence in different islands, and fighting as well, and making sure that you show that you are the strongest in the seas. And so if you meet a certain number of criteria by the end of the game, you have triggered the end of the game and you score your points. And so I found it very similar to how games such as Terraforming Mars are decided by the end of the game, where you are trying to fulfill certain milestones and achievements in the form of terraforming Mars, which is variable in how the game ends, but can alter your pursuit and your route to triggering the end of the game and hopefully getting as many victory points as you can by following that route. And so I really enjoyed that aspect of this game. I have thought about buying it, actually, and that's why it makes it onto this list, because I think my friends would enjoy this more thematic approach to a heavier, almost 3.5 weight game. But I really enjoyed Dead Reckoning and hope to play it again soon. Another game that I covered last year on the podcast was Unconscious Mind. This was being kickstarted at the time, and I demoed it on Tabletop Simulator. You've got a bunch of these designers here creating a game where you are simulating the friends and associates of Freud back, in the 1800s, treating patients and learning about psychotherapy. And so it's got an element of, say, patient care that I do enjoy and can relate to as a physician myself. But I really enjoyed this game because even though there is kind of a mash of different Euro-style mechanisms in play, I felt that they came together really well and in a thematic way with your own tableau, not only keeping track of the patients that you are treating and helping through their dreams, but also to kind of keep track of different benefits and kind of your asymmetric specialty in treating these patients as well. Some of that, especially this portion of the board, kind of felt like actually Wingspan, in the form of creating your tableau and expanding it to activate it multiple times as you go around it. And so building out that tableau to kind of give you a pseudo engine to activate every time is very reminiscent of Wingspan. And so to me, this game kind of felt like a Wingspan-esque game with the action selection and tableau activation, but in a theme and an overall weight complexity that offered a little bit more than, say, a Wingspan type of game does. And so I really enjoyed my play of this. I'm pretty sure that this is coming out soon and will be in backers' hands. I did not back this game myself, but I really am hopeful that this game is well supported and can be more widely available soon. The art is great and fantastic as well. So yeah, that is Unconscious Mind. Next is Village. So this is a 2011 game by Inka and Marcus Brand. Now, this game harkens back to the types of games that I've really come to enjoy, such as Agricola and other games, mostly from Rosenberg, from about 10 to 13 years ago or so. And in this game, you're kind of doing some of those similar mechanisms where you are utilizing worker placement to take actions that are spread out throughout this village in different forms, resource collecting and fulfilling objectives as you go along. But at the same time, your villagers end up growing up and becoming old and passing away, and they will be interred in the village cemetery. And so this game tries to simulate the passage of time with the workers that you have, and you try to build on the experiences of your former workers. It almost kind of tells a story in and of itself while being married to a bunch of Euro-style mechanisms and gameplay. And so I really enjoyed this game. I'm surprised that it hasn't had any digital format, as far as I'm aware of, implemented for itself. And so I would love to see this game get that support, and I know there is an expansion to this as well. I might have played it at the time, back when I did play it with that expansion, but I really enjoyed it. I like the concept of it, and I would want to return to it to see if it still holds up mechanically for me today, as I believe I played this before I started the podcast, and so I would love to revisit Village. Next is Nucleum. So Nucleum is no stranger to many people's lists and awareness. This is a game from last year that is doing quite well for itself. It's already 281, a game by Simone Luciani and David Turksey. This game is marketed as a mesh between Brass and Barrage, whereas I feel like most of it, as I mentioned on the podcast and channel, this game feels a little bit more like Brass than it does Barrage, but I can see where the elements are in keeping track of different ways to score points and trying to make a certain number of achievements which gradually increase from round to round, making it harder and harder to do. So that element is both seen in Barrage as well as in this game. But you've got the route building and resource management and I guess central board creation, by putting your own buildings onto this building, very much in the same way as Brass, but utilizing the actions that are all unique. You can see them face up here. But as you utilize these actions, you must also either choose to use them or to flip them face down to create the routes that you use to interconnect all of these cities. And so I really liked the tension and the decision space behind when to use an action for its action or when to use it for something that you for a route that you want to build out. And so I think this game has been well supported recently with already an expansion delivered or published pretty much, I think, as well as another one that has just been recently announced. And so Nucleum is here to stay, and I hope to continue to explore this game and hope for a chance to do so in the future. Similarly in weight to Nucleum is El Burro. This is a La Granja game, as you can see, by the same designers, Michael Kaler and Ode. Now, this game is a heavier reimplementation of La Granja, which features tableau building utilizing multi-use cards. Now, these multi-use cards feature occupations very much in a similar way as Agricola does, but you can use these cards to either use their special ability on, or every card has a different combination of farm implementations that you can add to grow crops or to keep track of animals or card income or hand size, and all the while trying to fulfill objectives, which are also listed on these cards. Now, this game in particular changes a few things from the base game of La Granja in the form where instead of a central market board where you're trying to do some area majority work, you are advancing up a track. And actually, in hindsight, this track advancement with these goats is very similar to the track advancement in Evacuation by Suhi, where you have two goats that you're advancing along this track, gaining bonuses all the while, and based off of where they are located, it's as close or as far away from each other as possible, can alter some of the ways that you gain points at the end of the game, I think, if I remember right. And so it has been a while since I demoed this game. I really want to return to this game and try it out, especially because La Granja is a game that I hold in high regard. I should probably rate this game here too. So let's give it a 7 for now, and I hope to play it again very soon and really dive into it a little bit more to see if the changes are something that I do approve of and enjoy compared to the base game. So that's El Burro. Next is the Guild of Merchant Explorers. This is a Matthew Dunstan game and Brett Gilbert game as well, where it's a roll and write that is quick to play, yet it offers really bombastic play as well, where you are exploring this map and placing down your cubes and trying to find different areas of this map to create different combinations and collections. But you receive these asymmetric player powers in the form of cards, which allow you to do a great drastic amount of different things that feel very much like they are breaking the rules. And so I really enjoyed how fast this game relatively played. It was pretty much a 30 to 45 minute game, but for the weight complexity and the time frame, I found this game was really fun, and I can still remember the play that I had of it many years ago. I think this was around the time where I started the podcast and talked about it. And I actually played this with Jacob, and so I really, yeah, I still remember this game and hope that I can play this game again at another point. I probably don't have it in my collection because it was pretty expensive for the weight and, for what the game was. It does come in a pretty big box, as I've seen before. But if I ever get the chance to play this again, I would do so. So the third to last game here is War of the Ring, the card game. I do own this game, but I've only played it once and haven't brought it back out yet. And I think the reason is because this game is a little bit different from the variety of games that I typically played, which are more Euro-based. This one is more thematic as a re-implementation of War of the Ring, the board game, where you are reliving and retelling the story of Lord of the Rings through card play. And so this game has a lot of hand management and deck management as well. You go through pretty much your entire deck, maybe once or twice during the game, and hopefully grabbing the right cards and playing them at the right time to win different areas that are thematic to Lord of the Rings and the books/movies, and trying to win them either getting a victory with a certain amount of points, I believe it's 10, before your opponent, or having 10 more points than your opponent, or basically having the most points by the end of the game if it reaches that point. And so this game really rewards repeated play. I couldn't tell you exactly how this game plays. I think I could pick it up fairly easy, but not as easily as other Euro games because of the mechanisms here. They're a little bit different from what I'm usually accustomed to. And so I think for that reason, I haven't been able to really dive into it, because my game group has been playing other games, a wider variety of games, rather than returning to this one. Now, recently, as of last year, this game was supported with another expansion, as well as a way to play it solo. And so that might be a way for me to play this game play this game again, and really see if this game is right for me. But unfortunately, it hasn't been a game that I've been able to play a lot of, which I think it is a game that you must do so to really enjoy it. But hopefully at some point I'll be able to do that, and that is War of the Ring, the card game. Now, I couldn't help but include Roads and Boats here again. I've talked about this pretty recently, but I have to throw this on here because this has been one of my favorite Splotter games that I've played, and one of my favorite games of all time that I have played recently. Roads and Boats really reminds me, speaking of an honorable mention when I've talked about Epochs, Clash of Cultures, the new Jeffrey CCH game that was kickstarted. That game gave me vibes of Age of Empires, and one aspect of Age of Empires was the logistical nature of finding a good place to harvest your resources, as well as establish trade with other opponents during the game, if you do play it that way. And this game is that logistical portion of Age of Empires that I really found enjoyable and familiar when I played it in this tabletop style of a game. And this game is highly interactive. It's hard to appreciate it based off of what you see here, but this game it's got so many different buildings that you can pursue. It's got a lot of route building, as you can see here by this drawing. A lot of interaction where you can use other people's routes to communally build up a wonder, which also not only gives you points but triggers the end of the game. And so yeah, this game is super modular as well because of the map. You can try different ways to rearrange this map and try to alter the puzzle that you're trying to achieve. But it's got so many different avenues to play and to victory that it really reminds me of like a huge kind of tech tree. And I don't know, it's kind of pictured here, but since there are so many buildings that you can pursue to try to build, each with their own little path of how you get there, it really felt like Age of Empires again, another Civilization games where you research different technologies to try to hone in on a certain strategy each game. And this game, I think, based off of how you set up the game, can really dictate what you try to accomplish, as well as what other people are doing as well. And so I really loved Roads and Boats, and hopefully this is probably one of the top games that I would love to try to play over and over again if it was in a digital format. But finally, the last game on this list is on Board Game Arena, and so shame on me for not playing this more. I have it rated as an 8 out of 10, and that is Caylus. This is a 2005 game, re-implemented by Caylus 1303. But this game, just shy of the top 100, has been a huge hit for many people, and perhaps one of the earliest worker placement games to utilize worker placement in a modern way that was very successful and very familiar to players who enjoyed Agricola, which came out a couple years after. But if you aren't familiar with this game, what you are doing is you are placing workers out into these different buildings to gain different resources, as you would surmise with a worker placement game. You have different areas where you can try to focus your efforts on, whether it's progressing up this favor track, if I remember right, to gain victory points there, building up the castle as well, or purchasing buildings that you can place onto this board. So you are essentially expanding the amount of different buildings that you can utilize during the game for worker placement purposes. Think of not only Agricola, but also Le Havre, which kind of has that expanding, both games have that expanding worker placement aspect to both, where your options become more and more available. But there's also a hint of Great Western Trail here, where you are building out the structures that you would like to utilize hopefully in the order that you would like to do them, so to activate them, because there is some interaction with the provost. You can move this provost in different directions in the game, hindering the activation of certain buildings. And so there's some interaction there that I haven't really seen in another worker placement, straight up Euro type of game, which I really enjoy. And I like the variability that you have in building out these different buildings, some of which are pictured here, for different activation and resources and things like that. And so yeah, this game really left a great impression on me. I've only played it twice, but that second play was just really memorable for me on Board Game Arena, and so this is something that I probably should get back into and see if I enjoy it even more. So yeah, those are 10 games that I would love to return to, and for whatever reason have not. So what do you think of this list? Let me know if in your opinion I should focus on one or more of these games, if you have been able to do so yourself, or if there's something I should avoid as well. Let me know. Let me know what other games that aren't on this list that you would love to return to but haven't found the time to do so. But as always, thank you for consulting with me today. Hope you schedule an appointment with me real soon, and I'll catch you on the next one. Take care.